a Deputy Washington Director at the Human Rights Watch. Nicole, thank you very much for talking to us, first of all. Can you tell us more about this incredibly grim report by Human Rights Watch? It's saying last year's attacks on Al Janina may amount to genocide, ethnic cleansing. What are the allegations here? What's going on here?
Yeah. Thanks for having us, and thanks for spending time to cover this story. It's absolutely devastating. It took us 10 months, and we talked to over 200 people for direct accounts of their experience of being targeted by the RSF because they're Masalite civilians or they're from non-Arab tribes in West Darfur around the town of Al Janina. We found that through our research and work over the last year, and talking to survivors, that ethnic cleansing did occur. We also found that the RSF was responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity, including torture, rape, and arbitrary killing, and forced displacement. We believe that there is a lot of work here to do and a lot of evidence that might mount to genocide. We did not have that finding. So we're calling for the experts who work on genocide cases to look specifically at the evidence, the command structures, and the intent. But men and boys were targeted initially. Children were targeted. People were targeted when they were fleeing. So it doesn't look like displacement was the only objective here. We have one account by a 17-year-old boy who talks about seeing 12 children and their parents gunned down and killed and murdered and thrown into the river by 2 RSF soldiers. So we have lots of civilian direct accounts and a very detailed report that we hope can be used by those entities and experts to hold the perpetrators accountable.
Nicole, have these allegations of genocide and ethnic cleansing, have they been made before, and will this time be different?
Yes. In fact, the International Criminal Court still has an open case on Darfur. And we'll remind your listeners that the RSF leadership was involved in that violence back 20 years ago and all the way through to severe spikes of violence in 2013. And so we're calling on the world and the parties to the conflict to let the ICC do its work. Let it look at the crime of genocide and these other 3 atrocity crimes that we found and documented. And so, yes, for sure, this is a continuum, and we've seen these crimes before. But the scale and the speed with which this was done over a 7-week period is really quite jarring. So we are thinking that 15,000, 10,000 is probably a very conservative, if not inaccurate estimate, and that it could be tens of thousands more.
You've also called on the United Nations and the African Union to impose urgently an arms embargo on Sudan. And not only that, but to deploy a mission with a robust police force to Darfur. Realistically, is this going to make a difference? Will it have an impact?
You know, I'll be completely direct with you. We were told that calling for a protections of civilians mission now is just unrealistic with the Security Council or the African Union. Member countries to both entities don't want to contribute forces. But you know what? It's the right thing to do. There is no safe place for civilians in Sudan right now. In any other era, there already would have been plans drawn up and concepts dropped for how to protect civilians. We see the same actors and the same belligerents who did these crimes now amassing outside of El Fasher in northern Darfur. And this is just terrifying because there's millions of people in El Fasher. And we know now, and we have documented, and we're telling the world the tactics and the violence that these actors are willing to use on innocent civilians. And so that's behind our call, even though your question to me about whether it's realistic, it's needed. And it's needed urgently. And on the arms embargo, there's already an arms embargo on Darfur. Obviously, with this level of violence, parties and regional actors and those that are supplying weapons to these to the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces are not abiding by the arms embargo in Darfur. But that said, again, nobody is safe in Sudan, and we want the arms embargo both enforced and expanded to the entire country.
Nicole, we really appreciate you speaking to us here on TRT World. Nicole Widdersheim speaking to us live there from Washington.